I'm so upset. Oh my God.
Let's see how Earth responds to that.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. So great to be back. And I come back to pretty good news. I'm curious what Anna thinks it is, and we'll get to that in a second. But it looks like we have the beginnings of a peace deal. We'll get to that momentarily. Trina Parsi is going to join us again today, talk about what could be in that deal. Is it real? How real is it? Can it last even with, of course, Israel trying to destroy it, which is what they're doing right now. And then, later in the program, not a big deal, but it turns out Donald Trump was considering taking away one of the foundations of Western civilization, habeas corpus. So we'll get to that story as well. First, Casper, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Really, really great to have you back. Very excited for the show today. I'm in an oddly fantastic mood. It has nothing to do with news. And it might be masking my skepticism in regard to this memorandum of understanding. But let's just wait and see what happens. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but we'll get to the details in just a bit.
Yeah, all right, well, let's dive into that story. So we have a deal. Do we? This time we actually might. Why? Because Israel's pissed. So that's probably why it means it's real. Anna, tell us all about it.
Well, indeed, Israel is absolutely panicking over what we are hearing is an agreed upon framework for a memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran. It is set to be signed Friday of this week in Geneva. But Israel panicking about the potential memorandum of understanding being signed makes me worry the most, because I think it's eventually going to come to a face-off between the United States and Israel, and whether Donald Trump is willing to do what it takes to make good on his promises as part of this MOU, that remains to be seen. But let me give you the details as we know them. Now, it's really important to keep in mind that this is simply a memorandum of understanding that extends the ceasefire by another 60 days. And in those 60 days, the whole point is that the United States and Iran will negotiate for a long-term peace deal. Now, in regard to the framework of the memorandum of understanding, we don't have the hardcore details. There's a little bit of a lack of information coming out right now, but we do have some statements coming from various players on the negotiations. So let's start off with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. As we all know, Pakistan has kind of served as a mediator between the United States and Iran. The Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, says, following intensive talks, we are pleased to announce that the peace deal between the United States and United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran has been reached. Again, it's not a peace deal, it's a memorandum of understanding. Nonetheless, both sides have declared the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. And that is a huge sticking point, as many of you probably already know, but we'll dig into that in just a bit. Now, President Trump also released a statement saying that the deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran, note the fact that he is respecting their actual formal title, Islamic Republic of Iran, is now complete. Congratulations to all. I hereby fully authorize the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and simultaneously herewith authorize the immediate removal of the United States naval blockade. Ships of the world, start your engines, let the oil flow. And Cenk, I think that his statement there is telling, because he is emphasizing the importance of reopening the Strait of Hormuz. As we've reported on this show multiple times, Trump has been able to mitigate absolute disastrous spikes in oil prices by tapping into the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And we have been selling oil like crazy and at a discount in some cases in order to, I guess, lessen the blow to some of our allies as a result of what Trump stupidly was persuaded by the Israelis to do, which is to attack Iran. Now, right now, we don't know for sure what the terms are of the memorandum of understanding, but apparently it immediately reopens the strait. The US lifts its blockade. Iran agrees to never pursue a nuclear weapon, which they've promised to do and were committed to again and again and again. All right, Iran has agreed to dilute its highly enriched uranium. They had already agreed to that previously. And the US, this is another sticking point, Cenk. The US frees $25 billion worth of frozen Iranian assets. So as you can imagine, the Israelis are losing their minds. And even though they tried to sabotage the MOU over the weekend by attacking Beirut, Lebanon, which is a red line for Iran, it appears that the Trump administration is moving forward with this anyway.
Yeah, so first off, we might have actually gotten to the limit of how much Israel can control America. And that's a bold statement, so we'll have to see it before we believe it. But it appears that we're going in that direction for specifically the reason that Anna mentioned there. The price of oil and the inflation that it's causing and the economic turmoil that it's causing is just too painful. And one of the things that Trump is getting back from almost all the Republicans in Congress is, bro, have you seen our polling numbers? We're gonna get wiped out. You gotta turn around right now, right now. If you don't turn around now, we're all in deep trouble when these midterms come around. So, and Trump doesn't want the stock market to go down. He, is concerned about losing Congress, losing his own power. And so it looks like that some Americans have begun to prevail over the Israelis within the American government, which is a shocking development. And so of course Israel will try to destroy that. We'll get to that in a second. But it's definitely real because you've got the Israel First pundits panicking all over American media. And I love the smell of Israel First pundit panic in the morning. And so that's definitely what we got today. So it's super loosey-goosey, this memorandum of understanding. It's basically saying, you guys gonna get rid of your nuclear weapons, not your entire nuclear program, but your weapons program? And the Iranians are like, yeah, bro, we've been saying that to you like 8 different times in 8 different deals, but yeah, sure, we are. And you're gonna open the Strait of Hormuz? Sure. And you guys are gonna leave? Yeah. And you're gonna end your blockade? Yeah. Okay, great, deal. And Anna, what did we say every day on this show? That deal was so easy. And here it is, it's super easy.
Right.
The critical part was Trump, drawing the line with Israel and saying, yeah, I don't really care how much war you want anymore. I've given you everything. I hit him I started a whole war for you last year. I started a second war for you. I've given you everything. I've got nothing left to give because now if I go any further, I'm done for. And so that's why we're at this critical juncture now.
Well, look, Cenk, I think that the real test will be whether or not Trump is willing to put Israel in its place when it inevitably begins carpet bombing Lebanon. Unless, and Joe Kent makes this point all the time, and I appreciate him for being so repetitive about it because it's important for the American people to understand how this works. The only way to really use our leverage against the Israelis is to point to the weapons that we, the American people, are forced into bankrolling on Israel's behalf and let them know no more weapons for you. Okay, no, we're not gonna give you any more bombs. We're not gonna provide any more military support as you continue carpet bombing Lebanon. They've ethnically cleansed southern Lebanon. Now they're getting to work over in Beirut, very clearly doing what we all predicted Israel was really up to. This is not about building a security buffer. This is about ethnically cleansing and settling land that doesn't belong to the Israelis. But again, I am willing to give Trump credit if and when I see him engage in actions that check the Israelis. And so far, we've gotten some reporting from Barak Ravid indicating that after Israel struck the suburbs of Beirut over the weekend, attempting to sabotage the deal, Trump allegedly called Bibi and had some harsh words, some finger wagging, and I don't know, based on the statements from Israeli officials, it doesn't seem like they intend to pull out of Lebanon at all. They want to continue their assault against Lebanon. And so what happens then? That's the real question here. So as much as I want to celebrate because I desperately want this war to come to an end, there are still some very big questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, well, look, the biggest question of all is what's gonna happen in Lebanon, right? Because Trump very clearly said in his announcement that this includes Lebanon. And then Israel Katz's defense minister came out and said, no, it doesn't include Lebanon, and we don't care if it does. We're gonna stay in southern Lebanon, we're gonna keep southern Lebanon. Of course, they always say, for a security buffer, right? For some Lebensraum, some breathing space for Israel. As we told you all along, of course they're gonna keep it. That the whole point was to steal southern Lebanon. And so they're not gonna back away from that. He said, not only that, we'll continue bombing Gaza and Syria. So, like, they're basically saying we're nowhere near done. We told you greater Israel, we meant greater Israel. Then Netanyahu comes out and backs him up and says, yeah, no, we're not leaving Lebanon at all. So Trump is saying you gotta go, Israel's saying absolutely not. So what happens next? So here's what I can guarantee you. Israel is not leaving Lebanon. It doesn't matter how forcefully we say it. It doesn't matter how many strongly worded letters we send. The only thing that can make any difference at all is, I think you mistook me for someone who stutters. No, we're going to take away every dime you get. You're not going to get to merge militaries. You're not going to get to do any of these maniacal things. We are completely and utterly done with you if you do not leave southern Lebanon. Now, does Trump have the cojones to do that? No, he doesn't. There isn't a single American politician that does. Well, maybe Ro Khanna, maybe Tom Massey, but they're not in power. And so then, how do we resolve this? I think, Anna, the way to resolve it, the way that it might resolve itself, is through Trump's kind of funny cowardice in a sense, right? He doesn't want to confront Israel because then Miriam will be really upset. This is Miriam's war, right? And he doesn't want them doing whatever they've threatened to do with him before. At the same time, he can't stay. So I think that there's some chance that, as I've said all along, that Trump will go, hey, listen, we have a deal, and the strait is back open. I'm good, we're ended their nuclear weapons program, we're leaving. And we pull up and start going. So we're not saying, Israel, we're gonna cut off your funds. We're not saying you can't go into Lebanon. We're just gonna leave. And if Israel and Iran wanna keep fighting, my guess is Trump's gonna say, hey, that's kind of a you problem, not a me problem, which would actually be not so bad. I mean,
that'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
I would welcome that outcome entirely. If Israel would like to go it alone, by all means, please go it alone. Enjoy, have a great time. Let's see how that works out for you. But again, if we're going to be supplying the weaponry for them to carry out their assaults, not just against Iran, but now several countries in the region, that does embolden them and that provides support for what they're doing. And I'm not going to buy for a second that the White House is against it if they are supplying the weapons necessary for Israel to do it. If you want to go it alone for real, without the American taxpayers having to bankroll whatever, project Israel wants to engage in the Middle East. But one other thing I wanted to point to, Cenk, that you had mentioned earlier, you talked about, you said something about like who wins in this deal, the framework of this MOU. And I gotta be honest with you, for the United States, it is actually kind of miraculous that if things play out the way that Trump is advertising right now, we're actually incredibly lucky that Iran might actually allow transit through the Strait of Hormuz without a toll. We lost this war so badly, we got spanked hard, okay? Our eyes are still teary from that spanking. There was no need for Iran to offer any concession. There was no military option for the United States to reopen the Strait of Hormuz without a toll, without the Iranians having control of it. So the fact that it's possible that this deal could be signed and the Strait of Hormuz will be open for transit toll-free, that's kind of amazing. And that's a pretty good deal that, again, the Iranians didn't have to offer.
Yeah, so last two things on that. So we're gonna talk more about this a little bit later in the program, but the Iranians do have a provision if in the MOU apparently that calls for Iranian arrangements for the Strait of Hormuz. So that is a loophole for charging something and not calling it a toll. So that's not completely foreclosed yet. And as we'll discuss later, the Iranian hardliners think that's not enough, that they should have definitely kept a toll. But the second thing that I want to say that people are purposely trying to confuse you over in media in America is well, we wanted this, this, and this, and so we didn't get that, and so that's not good enough, etc. No, as any gambler knows, there's the bet before the game starts, and then there's the bet after the game has started. Because after the game has started, the conditions change entirely. So you could say that you wanted X, Y, or Z before the war started, but that's entirely irrelevant. There's now, after the war began, it became absolutely clear that we cannot open up the Strait of Hormuz without Iran giving us permission. So we tested them, and they passed the test militarily. We might hate that, but that's the reality on the ground and in the water, and there's no question over it. And that's why we're doing this deal that isn't that great for us in terms of what we, could have gotten. And it was a war worth it? Absolutely not. Has it put us backward rather than forward? Yes. By the way, again, all things we told you would happen, and they happened exactly as we said they would. And so, given the situation now, though, it's a pretty good deal for us, because all right, we'll work out the Iranian arrangements. There's going to be, apparently JD Vance didn't disagree, about $300 billion that is going to go to rebuilding Iran, but not from us, from the Gulf countries. So at least it's not coming from us. The Strait of Hormuz opens back up, and the economy can go back to functioning, and we could get inflation under control. So given where we are today, and we end their nuclear weapons program, it's a pretty good deal for us. It's, I think, a pretty good deal for Iran. That's why the only people crying are the Israelis. And it's not like Israel suffers at all. It's not like, oh my God, they got to give up Tel Aviv or Haifa. No, they're just like, oh no, we didn't get to murder everyone in Iran. We didn't get to neuter another regional opponent. And we didn't get to put in a puppet regime. Oh, boo-hoo.
I disagree with you, Cenk. Israel loses big. If a peace deal is eventually signed with terms similar to what we outlined here, Israel, by making the stupid decision to pressure the United States to carry out this war, is in a far more precarious position in the Middle East. Because think about it. I mean, right now, the Iranian government, the IRGC, thanks to the fact that we assassinated their leaders, the latest batch of leaders are younger, and they are in fact hardliners. In fact, the hardliners within the IRGC right now as we speak are not happy with this deal, even though Iran comes out really getting a ton of concessions from the United States. So you have hardliners in charge. There is no indication that we're going to do anything about Iran's ballistic missiles. There's no indication that the United States is going to pressure Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah in order for a peace deal, or in order for Israel to stop, carpet bombing Lebanon or ethnically cleansing the southern half of it. So Israel should learn a lesson from this. Okay, maybe the bloodthirstiness in the end isn't going to work out so well for you. I think Israel is in a weaker position, and they deserve it. But rather than learning lessons from it, right now, as we speak, they're trying to find ways to sabotage a possible peace deal.
Yeah, but I don't think we're disagreeing, because I'm not saying that Israel doesn't come out in a weaker position. They certainly do, right? But what is the weaker position going to cost them? It's going to cost them their ability to do more offense. So it's like they make it seem, of course, as always, like as an existential threat. Oh no, we're all gonna die, right? No, nothing's gonna happen to Israel unless they keep egging on and egging on and egging on Iran, and they get into a full-scale war without our backing, which they might do, but then that's, again, their goddamn problem. And so, but right now they can solidify their gains. They've already added a ton of territory even without southern Lebanon. And there's no threat to Israel itself at all, unless they keep pushing for more and more war and somehow get into a war they can't handle without our aid, right? So all it does is it hurts their ability to execute their fascist plans for greater Israel. Okay, great, I'm thrilled about that, but it's not like it's put Israel in any kind of existential danger. It's just hurt their ability to take more land from their neighbors.
That's exactly right. So yeah, we absolutely do agree. What this war has actually accomplished is a new defense umbrella or defense makeup within the Middle East, right? With Iran essentially serving as a check and balance to Israel's aggression and Greater Israel Project, pursuit of the Greater Israel Project. So it's kind of ironic considering all of the fear mongering we hear about Iran here in the United States and the Western world, period. But at the end of the day, it is shameful that you have to rely on Iran, of all countries, to check Israeli aggression in the region. And we'll see if it works. I'm hoping it does because I want the endless bloodshed in the Middle East to end. Before we end, Cenk, I do want to, or go to our next segment, I do want to just do a quick juxtaposition of what can be heard within the Trump administration, because you can tell that there are some pretty significant differences, if not in action, certainly in rhetoric. And so I'm going to start off with JD Vance. So as you had mentioned earlier, JD Vance had confirmed that as part of the memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran, the US would facilitate $300 billion in war damages for Iran. And I want you to watch that video right now. This is A4, take a look.
The Iranians are saying that they're going to have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund. True or false?
Well, Ed, that's the sort of thing they could have access to, funded by the Gulf Coast Coalition, so long as they honor their end of the obligation. I think that one of the things you're going to see, Ed, and people have to be skeptical of this, is that the hardliners in the Iranian system will overemphasize the benefits that Iran gets while underemphasizing all the things that they have to concede and all the things they have to provide in order to get these benefits. So we absolutely are open to the Gulf Coast countries investing in the reconstruction of Iran, but only if Iran ends their nuclear program, ends their enriched stockpile of material, and is really open to an inspections and enforcement regime that gives the American people confidence they're never going to have a nuclear weapon.
So there you have the vice president who on multiple occasions, I've warned the audience not to buy into this idea that he's like some sort of dove. But at the end of the day, his messaging there, I think, was the right messaging. He struck a good balance. He's offering a diplomatic means in helping Iran rebuild following a pretty disastrous war. But it's quid pro quo based, meaning, if Iran carries through with its part of this plan, this deal. Now, juxtapose the tone and the rhetoric of the vice president with our Secretary of Defense / Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. Here's what he was saying over the weekend, A3.
Did the Hezbollah-Israel strikes disrupt any of the plans to have this memorandum signed today? Are we on track for a Sunday signing?
From all I know, we are on track. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. There's logistics involved into how these things happen. Ultimately, obviously, we're attuned to what's happening with Hezbollah firing rockets into northern Israel, which they need to stop doing, and Iran needs to encourage them to stop doing that in very adamant ways. And Israel was very measured in its response, understanding that a deal we're on the verge of a deal.
So nothing was signed on Sunday. That's been postponed to Friday in Geneva. But it's just interesting to me, Cenk, that again and again you see Hegseth regurgitating the neoconservative talking points in order to keep the line for conflict and war open. It seems like he feels like he really did shine throughout this war, which couldn't be further from the truth. But I'm sorry, Israel didn't attack the suburbs of Beirut this past weekend because of Hezbollah, okay? They did it to sabotage a potential peace deal. Nothing scares the Israelis more than the possibility of peace breaking out.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. First off, if we're really gonna do a $300 billion fund, and when I say we, I know it comes from the Gulf countries, but still to give Iran $300 billion at the end of this war, that shows you the depth of how badly we lost, if we're keeping it real, from the beginning of the war, right? And that's why we were right to not go in the first place. Still, at this day, it's not our money, take it and run, okay? Want to be super clear about that. Secondly, yeah, it's not just Pete Hegseth. Almost all mainstream media is Pete Hegseth. Every article I read today is Israel forced to attack Lebanon because of Hezbollah's aggression into Israel. They make it sound like Lebanon is invading Israel and has has taken northern Israel instead of the reality, which is that Israel invaded Lebanon and has taken southern Lebanon. Every article responding to Hezbollah, forced into responding to Hezbollah, nonsense. They're all lying nonstop on behalf of Israel. It's disgusting. So, but finally, we're curious what you guys think, because I mean, how is this going to end? What happens in Lebanon? Can we ever be, can we ever get to peace? Because Anna's right, everybody knows. Look, this question we wouldn't ask you because it's obvious. Is Israel for peace or war? Of course it's for war, endless war. All we've ever gotten is requests for one war after another after another. The idea of peace makes Israel like jittery, like they're on withdrawal symptoms. Like, where's my war? Where's my war? I want more war. Okay, and these are the disgusting people that our politicians are pretending are our allies. Anyway, will the current US, this is what we're asking on tyt.com, will the current US-Iran peace deal hold, or will Israel kill it? A, it will hold and the war will finally be over. B, it won't hold, Israel will kill it. C, Israel will attempt to kill it, but we won't listen to them. That's the one I'm rooting for, but I don't know if that's the one that's gonna happen or not. I might have to answer not sure for D on this one. So, but we all know Israel's never going to accept peace. That's an anathema to the current Israeli government. And honestly, to the Israeli government in the past, in the future. If you're a settler colony and you want to expand, the only thing that's going to get you that is more war. So they've always been in favor of war. They've never stopped being at war with their neighbors. And so they're going to be furious at the idea of peace. The only question that remains is, what is Trump going to do about it once Israel tries to start this war for the third time?
Well, we're going to hear from specific Israelis and all their panicking and whining when we return for the next segment. Make sure you stick around for that. We'll be right back.
All right, let's go to members on tyt.com. Jenks Tricep of Fury says, hi folks, peace deal going to last? Hell no, Israel won't allow it, but Jenk is back, so I'll take the win. Well, thank you. Panic of Funkatron on Funkatron says, I'm actually surprised Trump cares about anything other than himself. Well, no, not really. I mean, he cares that his reputation and his legacy is going to be utterly ruined. His economy is going to be ruined. So it definitely comes back to him and his reputation. LCPR 666 says, nope, don't believe it. There'll be a false flag or some other panic, or they'll just bitch walk Trump back to the war. That's one of the things we didn't mention. We mentioned that earlier in the possibility that they have blackmail on Trump. If you're a mainstream media reporter and you're outraged by that idea, shut up, and you're an idiot. But there's also the possibility of a false flag attack. And again, if you're not concerned about that because you think, oh, Israel would never do that. Okay, again, you're an idiot. Of course Israel would do that. Israel would do anything for more war and bloodshed. So yeah, we should be on the lookout for that for sure. Free Love says, Trump will let Israel break the deal with no repercussions. Then when Iran retaliates, Trump will frame it as Iran being the aggressor. This will continue until Trump and Bibi use nuclear weapons. Afterwards, they'll just justify by saying we had no choice. Iran wouldn't play the terms of the peace deal. We're being played as always. Back on the online news show, The Young Turks, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian with you guys. And these lovely people who just signed up through tyt.com/join. Anna's homeboy, Carolyn 61, Colby Duh 666, Captain Crazy Eyes, and the Seventh Angel. Now that's a crew. That sounds like the cast of a Quentin Tarantino movie. So I love that.
I'm loving that my boy's watching. I see you.
Okay, we've got your homeboy, we've got Captain Crazy Eyes and the Seventh Angel. Can't go wrong. All right, Casper, what's next? Oh, here.
Well,
yeah. Sorry, let me go to it. Wait, are we going to Trita now or later?
No, second hour. So Trita Parsi is going to be our guest for today. He's going to kind of go over, some of his expertise and analysis on the potential MOU being signed later this week. But for now, I thought we could maybe focus a little bit on the reaction to the pending MOU.
Okay, so let me take it away. Israel First is in a panic and it's beautiful to watch. Mark Levin's like, no, not peace. Ben Shapiro's like, no, they're all breaking out in hives at the idea of peace. We can't have peace. I love it. We're gonna show you the clips right here. Anna, what do you got for us?
Yes. Now, before we get to a nice mashup of the Israel Firsters in the US absolutely losing their minds that peace might break out. What a shock. Let me give you some statements from actual officials in Israel, beginning with Israel Katz, who says, and by the way, this is the Israeli defense minister. He says, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and I are leading a clear policy that determines that the IDF will remain in the security zones in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza without any limit. So basically he's saying we will continue occupying and bombing these countries regardless of what the United States is demanding of us, mostly because they would want to sabotage a possible peace deal. The Iranians have made very clear that bombing Lebanon, remaining in Lebanon, occupying Lebanon is a red line for them. And there will be no peace deal unless Israel pulls out. So what Katz is saying here is, nah, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna pull out. He says Syria and Gaza without any time limit to protect the border and Israeli communities from there against jihadist elements. Now, as you can imagine, Itamar Ben-Gvir had his own unhinged statements to make. Now, remember, let me just preface this by saying Ben-Gvir and other Israeli officials have tried to convince the international community and the American people that the whole reason why they're attacking Lebanon is because of the threat posed by Hezbollah. But get a load of what Itamar Ben-Gvir says. We must continue destroying houses in southern Lebanon, continue pushing residents away, continue eliminating Hezbollah. So in other words, that's right, Hezbollah, I gotta mention Hezbollah, but pushing residents away, in other words, continue ethnically cleansing the Lebanese people from their own homes, their own land. We intend to continue doing that. Yair Golan, the left-wing Israeli politician, that doesn't really exist, says this morning, Israeli citizens are waking up to an agreement between the United States and Iran made over Israel's head. In one signature stroke, immense military achievements secured with the courage of our pilots and the blood of our fighters have been erased, while Netanyahu stood on the sidelines, weak, ill, isolated, and powerless. Wait, what did you guys accomplish in Iran exactly? Can you please lay that out for us in a detailed manner? Because the United States and Israel got spanked bad, okay? Like nothing got erased other than possible inflation for the global community because of the Strait of Hormuz continuing or remaining closed. But Cenk, your thoughts before we go to that fun mashup of media figures in the US freaking out.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's what's amazing about the state of Israel right now. Yair Golan is supposed to be the left winger, and he's like, we didn't kill enough. We didn't get enough war, right? What part of that is left wing? I mean, that's like the Israeli version of left wing. So they're like, we didn't take enough territory. Like, and Ben-Gvir always does the confessions because he thinks, what are we bothering to lie to these guys for anyway? I'll say guys. We have them completely under, or almost now apparently not completely under our control, but enough under our control that we can just say it. Yeah, we're going to take their homes and we're going to take their land, and this peace deal is going to get in our way. That's why we love war. We're an out of control fascist state that loves war. And we want to take all your land and take your physical, literal homes. And if you defend your own home, we'll just call you a terrorist. And so we're going to talk about the Israelis here in America like Ben Shapiro. But Shapiro also made it seem like, oh, well, we have to keep the war going because Israel hasn't gotten enough and the other side are terrorists. And he thinks that's like a clever ploy. We've already gone through this a million times. You can call them terrorists all you like. Israel's clearly the bigger terrorist, there's no question about that. They kill 100 times the civilians, have a worse civilian kill ratio. But they think, oh, we'll just tell the Americans the dirty Muslims and Christians are the terrorists and we had to steal their land. That's played out. So you can repeat that 100 times over to your remaining 3 listeners, but it's not gonna work.
Yeah, the Lebanese people have the right to defend themselves. And what emerged in a form of defense was Hezbollah in the 1980s in order to end Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon. And they succeeded in doing that. And Israel has been trying to fight them and demonize them ever since. But make no mistake about it, Hezbollah wouldn't even exist had it not been for Israeli aggression and attempts at annexing land that doesn't belong to them. Now, with that in mind, let's go to the chorus of Israel First media figures in the United States who have engaged in simultaneous meltdowns. Take a look.
Israel will not be able to adhere to what would be a suicide pact. The Israeli people won't put up with it. The prime minister won't put up with it. We should not accept it either. Because remember, Hezbollah has attacked us. And when Israel is forced to defend itself, including preemptively against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and remember, they're not at war with Lebanon. They have a peace deal with Lebanon. They've never been at war with Lebanon.
Israel is going to have to respond to terrorism across its border, as we'll see. If the United States is going to suddenly become an advocate for the idea that Israel can't defend itself, then this is a giant L for the United States and for our allies. If you keep sending the signal to a terror-backing regime that chants death to America, that you want to deal with them so badly that you're going to tell our allies in the region to stand down, you are giving them an enormous amount of forward momentum. And that is a huge mistake.
There's talk of a reconstruction fund of hundreds of billions of dollars. They'll be like doing a Marshall Plan for Germany while the Nazis were still in power.
Here's the problem though, Mark Thiessen. Equating the IRGC with Nazis really cheapens the severity and the barbarism that was carried out during the Holocaust. But Thiessen can't help himself. But back to you, Cenk, what do you think?
Yeah, I like how they've dropped almost all pretenses at being Americans. They're like, this is gonna hurt Israel. America can't do this to Israel. Wait, I thought you guys cared about America. And then they drop in a little thing like, well, America would also be hurt because Israel would be hurt and you guys are dogs.
It's amazing.
No, I mean, they're totally telling on themselves, right? I mean, if we did a show where we're like, you have to do this for Turkey, then this will hurt Turkey. America, you better get back into war for Turkey. People would be like, what? Even if although Turkey's a NATO country and arguably could make that argument legally and technically, right? But it would seem so weird if we demanded that or some other show demanded that America work for Nicaragua. But they do it every single day. And then they go, oh no, it's okay, we're allowed to, because then we'll just throw out this dual loyalty trope, right? And you're not allowed to say it. No, I am allowed to say it. I will tell you right now, I don't even think they have dual loyalty. I think they only have loyalty to Israel.
And by the way, I mean, look, people are probably not gonna love that I say this, but I'm gonna say it. If you are an immigrant to this country, right, and you're fortunate enough to be here in the United States, I just don't think you get to pressure our government to carry out your pet project, right? Whether you be a Cuban individual in South Florida, whether you be part of the violent faction of the Iranian diaspora that loves watching their home country get bombed to smithereens. You don't get to do that. Your priority needs to be the United States. You're here and you should be here because you value and prioritize what's best for this country, not whatever your pet project is in terms of foreign policy for your origin country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love Armenia, but America comes first. I live here, I was born here, I identify as an American.
Look, I want to be clear about that. So you're Bulgarian American and you love Bulgaria too. No problem, that's not a problem at all. Okay, you love Israel for whatever reason. No, of course, whatever, no problem, right? Everybody gets to still have some feelings for where their ancestors came from, etc., right?
Of course.
But if you then say, no, America must serve Bulgaria, America must give Bulgaria hundreds of billions of dollars, America must attack Serbia and Greece on behalf of Bulgaria and spend trillions doing it. No, you weirdo, we don't have to do any of those things. And when you say that we must do those things, it makes us very reasonably conclude that you care more about Bulgaria than you do about America. And you could say well, the Bulgarians don't get to call troops. Nobody else gets to call troops of any sort. Only Israel has like hundreds of tropes they could release like political landmines and go, ha, you're not allowed to criticize us. But whether it's Bulgaria, Nicaragua, or Israel, the same rules apply. If you keep demanding that we serve that country instead of this country, well, you're saying, I don't really care about being an American. I'm just here as a Bulgarian asset to get you to do what the country that I actually love wants to do.
Exactly. Now let's end on one final thing that's important for the audience to know about. While there is a lot of complaints among the Israeli firsters in the US, Israeli politicians in Israel, it's important to understand that there are hardliners in Iran who are also unhappy with the framework of this memorandum of understanding. So for instance, one Iranian member of parliament says that the fact that they say we won and America has retreated is a blatant lie. Okay, Kamran, like what's going on, bro? Like, what do you mean? Like the US and certainly Israel, like we have been defeated for sure. There's no question about it. But he continues, oh no, I'm sorry. This is the senior commander of the IRGC. He says, we must ask Mr. Ghalibaf and Mr. Arakchi, wasn't closing the Strait of Hormuz one of our country's main levers in the Ramadan war? And wasn't closing the strait, blocking the enemy's commercial and economic breathing space and bringing it close to suffocation? With what logical justification and acceptable explanation are these gentlemen going to give up this fateful lever? I want to be clear, there has been no indication that Iran will give up control of the strait. They will maintain control of the strait, meaning that they can still utilize it as leverage should the United States attack once again. And he further says, they say, we will charge service fees from passing ships. That's it. America and its allies have martyred former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and the Islamic world shed the blood of dozens of nuclear scientists and high-ranking military commanders, hundreds of innocent people, and oppressed students. They have caused hundreds of billions of dollars in damage, and now by opening the Strait of Hormuz and charging service fees from passing ships, we are going to release their economic and commercial bottleneck. And it's very clear that he's not happy about that. He would like more pain to come to the United States and the global economy in retaliation for the attacks in the first place.
Yeah, well, look, from their perspective, I kind of get it. I think they're wrong strategically as well, not just morally, because you shouldn't want a war to continue, especially given that your people are going to be badly hurt as well. But he's saying, look, we've got them so badly cornered that they're saying they're shouting mercy basically, and so why wouldn't we charge a huge toll through the Strait of Hormuz? And they killed our leader, and they killed so many innocent scientists, children, etc. Now we always look at it from the American perspective, especially because of our national media works for Israel, as like, oh yeah, we get to kill all their leaders, but they don't look at it that way. That's like them killing Trump and the entire cabinet, etc. Or if Biden was in charge, Biden and Kamala Harris and the entire cabinet, we wouldn't be like, oh yeah, whatever. No, we'd be like, no, we want endless war to get justice for those deaths, let alone if they murdered 160 American school children on purpose with a double tap, right?
Yeah, Jake, do you remember when Israel killed the entirety of the Yemeni parliament? Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. It's hard to, everything gets memory hold, right? Yeah. But like they've carried out insane acts that I know for a fact that we as the United States would not stand for if anyone even attempted, even thought of carrying something like that out against us. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, so we've kind of gone along with this Israelification of our government. So both Israel and America now think it's like no big deal to murder other people's leaders. They're like, oh yeah, we have a unilateral right to kill any world leader we like. No, we don't. And so if we do, that country is gonna be super pissed, and their hardliners are gonna want blood and revenge and justice, right? And we could say, well, that's not fair. And if they try to defend themselves, they're terrorists. Yeah, we could say that all day long, but that's not gonna change their mind. So they wanna keep going with the war. They're like, we're winning, and they're not wrong about that. So the reason why I say strategically, at the end of the day, the hardliners are not correct, even within Iran's context, is that, yeah, but if we keep going, then we are going to bomb the civilian infrastructure of Iran, including the oil fields and the gas fields, and you're not going to be able to rebuild that for 5 to 10 years. A lot more Iranian citizens are going to die. A lot more of their senior officials are going to die. Yeah, maybe you do a lot of damage to Israel. Maybe you do a lot of damage to us, but that's definitely not worth it, especially when America is basically saying, okay, we're gonna leave, We couldn't do the regime change that we wanted. We couldn't neuter you like we wanted. So if I was in Iran and I looked at it from only their perspective, I would still say, take the win. This is a huge win. Don't listen to the hardliners. If you continue the war, you never know when something starts to go wrong. You might be winning now, but what if things turn around on you? And in war, easily could. So not that the Iranians care at all what I think, but I would urge them to take the deal and run and not listen to these hardliners. And hardliners are almost always going to be wrong. They're hardliners, right? But last thing is, the only thing that they're a little bit right about is, of all their different demands that I think are too unreasonable, one that they might get their way on is they're going, no. Even if we open up the Strait of Hormuz, we should not allow any Israeli ship through, whether it's military trade or any other thing. No, maybe everybody else can get to go through, but not Israel. And that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. When we come back from the break, I actually want to talk a little bit about the society in Israel, meaning ordinary civilians, the immense amount of pressure they are putting on government to go even more hardcore in their foreign policy, go max, as they say. And we're also going to hear from one of the main challengers to Netanyahu, Naftali Bennett. He was just interviewed by Piers Morgan, and some of what he had to say gives you a sense of how much the politicians there are becoming more and more radicalized, and pressure from Israel society has a lot to do with that. We'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to actually our new fun X audience. We're live on X now. Andrew Koo writes in, maybe USA should fight Israel. Look, I'm
not against it.
Yeah, we don't need to go that far, but they're certainly not an ally. Jenna 111382 writes in on YouTube, super chat. I'll be somewhat surprised and thoroughly horrified if any Democrat that has taken AIPAC money survives the presidential primary at this point. Look, Jenna, if things hold as they are, I think the way it's gonna go is Ro Khanna versus the rest of the pro-Israel Democrats. That's not a bad place for people on our side to be. So no, have at it. Shh, don't tell them. No, Buttigieg and the rest. Oh yeah, supporting Israel. That's the way to go. Yeah. Definitely, our greatest ally. You guys got this. Anyway, our Stone writes in, let's think what could happen by Friday. 1, attention turns from Israel to Cuba. 2, allies could reignite tensions in Lebanon, ruining the deal and give time for investors to sell stock before stock markets close. I'm skeptical. On number 2, we've been discussing it all day. We're worried about that as well, that Israel's gonna try to ruin it. I wouldn't worry about Cuba. I mean, I think that the American people have had enough of war. If Trump starts to talk about going into Cuba, everybody's gonna be like, oh, for Christ's sake, are you serious? Elliot CP says this deal has a poison pill. It can be extended over and over, during which time Hormuz remains open, but Iran gets no relief on sanctions or no assets unfrozen beyond 12 to 24 billion. It'll become Syria version 2.0. That's why on paper it looks good for Iran and terrible for Israel. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur and Anik Sperin with you guys. So let's go to our next story. Israel is getting surprising pressure from a group that you might not expect, their own citizens. Anna, help us understand this.
Well, as Trump desperately tries to forge ahead with a potential peace deal with Iran, the fact of the matter is the political pressures on the ground in Israel are basically the antithesis of the political pressure that President Trump is facing. Here in the US, the war against Iran began as a deeply unpopular war and only continued to get more and more unpopular. And in the meantime, the latest Pew Research poll released in June shows that 60% of Americans have an unfavorable view toward Israel, which is important to keep in mind when you see how much the Israeli people want to continue the war against Iran, and in fact, want to go even further in Lebanon. So according to a new report by Reuters, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces plunging support in the electorally vital north, where Hezbollah rocket fire has been heaviest. A new poll has shown putting pressure on him to take a more hawkish stance on as elections loom. And I should note that attacking Lebanon would be a red line for Iran. And they've said that they would not only attack Israel in retaliation, but they would refuse to engage in a peace deal with the US if Israel remains occupying Lebanon and continues bombing Lebanon. The polls showed that only 33% of voters in the north say that they would back Likud, which is of course the party that Netanyahu is in the next election, down from 35% it gained in the last election in 2022. Support for the wider right-wing bloc that makes up Netanyahu's coalition has also fallen yet further in the north, the poll showed. Now, the drop in support for Likud is around 3 times greater in the north, home to around a fifth of the electorate than elsewhere in Israel, and around 70% of the voters surveyed there said they disapproved of the handling of the war in Lebanon more than elsewhere in Israel. Now, don't get me wrong, they don't disapprove of how the war is carried out in Lebanon because they think that it's been brutal. They're against ethnically cleansing southern Lebanon. No, they love all of that. They don't think the IDF has gone far enough. Apparently wiping out entire villages, that doesn't go far enough. Now, remember, there are elections looming to determine who the next prime minister of Israel will be. Shockingly, Benjamin Netanyahu wants to get reelected. It's amazing. I mean, this is supposed to be a democracy, and that guy's been in power on and off again for like decades. But one of his challengers is Naftali Bennett. He was just interviewed by Piers Morgan, and I want to give you a taste of what the opposition to the far right Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sounds like. Take a look at this.
I would say that Iran is very similar to the Soviet Union of the 80s. It's a very disconnected, corrupt, incompetent regime that doesn't care about its own people. And it's destined to collapse. I believe that soon in Israel, there'll be a new government. Hopefully I'll lead that new government. And I want to tell the Iranian regime from here, I'm going to be your worst nightmare ever. I won't relent until we free your people, ensure you don't have a nuclear weapon. So you've got no hope. We won't let up on this effort.
So, Cenk, I think the juxtaposition between the political pressures on the ground in Israel versus the United States further reinforced the notion that we should not have entered a war alongside an ally, any ally, but in this case, obviously Israel.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you a question in a second about some of the polling in the north, but first, two things about what Naftali Bennett said. He said, we're going to free your people, referring to the Iranian people. Really? I mean, you're still bothering with this propaganda? Like only literally the dumbest people in the world think that Israel's trying to help Iran. Plus every national media reporter, but you already had them in your back pocket, right? Seriously, I mean, what addled old fool listening to Fox News still believes, I think Israel has Iran's best interests in mind. They're doing this for the Iranian people. I can't even believe that exists, even in the 98-year-old Fox News audience. Nobody could be that stupid. Okay, now more importantly, everybody says, oh, it's just the Netanyahu government, because everybody in America and the media and government love to cover for Israel, right? Oh, but once Netanyahu's gone, Israel's gonna go back to a land of milk and honey and peace and rainbows and unicorns. No, the guy after him is like, I'll be even worse, even more war. I mean, you just saw it with your own eyes. He says, no, we're never gonna stop. War, 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 and more war. And the Israeli population is like, yes, more blood. Let's be honest. That's what they're saying. War is blood, tons and tons of it. And Israel says we can't get enough. No, sorry guys, there's something deeply wrong with the culture in Israel right now. I'm not saying it can't be fixed. I'm not saying that it was always like this. And I'm certainly not saying it's endemic to any particular population or demographic, right? But currently, the culture in Israel has become fully fascist. So there is no amount of war you can promise where that would turn them off. So if, I don't know, man, I feel like if Satan himself came back and was like, I will lead Israel into endless war, we'll destroy and murder all of our Muslim neighbors, he'd be like, oh, he's at 98% approval. Because they're going more right-wing than Netanyahu, which seemed previously impossible. So don't tell me that, oh, it's just a temporary thing. No, the Israeli population right now is voting in favor of fascism and endless war. So that's a stone cold fact. And it maybe if that doesn't break your heart, there's something wrong with you. But if you're denying that and you're closing your eyes to it, you're being absurd. Look at what he said. And by the way, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Everything Naftali Bennett says is for more war, more death. And even Yoav Gallant, the so-called left-winger, we quoted him earlier saying that he thought Netanyahu wasn't doing enough war against Iran. So no, the Israeli population is lost at this point.
So look, I mean, you don't have to rely on Cenk to tell you this. You don't even have to rely on this poll. You can rely on the few sane figures who remain in Israel and have been speaking out against the radicalization of the broader population in the country. Gideon Levy is speaking out about this almost on a regular basis now, and he talks about how lonely he feels as an Israeli who is witnessing all this bloodshed and doesn't agree with it, thinks it's actually not just bad for the countries that are being attacked by Israel, but bad for Israel itself, which is undeniably true. It's demonstrably true. And so, look, I don't know how to explain for certain. I think it's a mix of factors that has led to the society in Israel becoming far more right-wing and pro-war. I think one of the factors is a lot of the peaceniks have left. I mean, there has been a lot of people who were previously living in Israel and after October 7th decided to leave, not just over what Hamas did on October 7th, but the response of Israel to October 7th. And who are those people gonna be? Obviously, they're gonna be left-wing peacenik types who don't really wanna be associated with what's going on. And so what happens is the people who remain end up being the war-loving hardliners who don't think that this extremely right-wing government in Israel has gone far enough.
Yeah, just real quick on that, Anna. Look, fascism has nothing to do with religion or race. It goes around the world. We've seen it in Europe, we've seen it in Asia, and now seeing it in Israel. And so there's a couple of toxic factors that go into it. Extreme victimhood mentality. The Germans thought that they were crushed after World War I very unfairly, that they were the victims of financial interests and the other global powers and the other Europeans, let alone the Jews, etc. And that toxic victimhood then met unchecked power as they rebuilt their military. And so that's why enabling Israel's worst instincts doesn't help them in both categories, by the way, that you're always the victims. And when you go to take southern Lebanon or 70% of Gaza, you're still the victims, victim. We're not helping them by egging them on that way, because that's not remotely true. They live in a delusional, detached from reality mental state right now. We need to help them snap out of it as if we were actually their friends and allies, because they think, well, I mean, of course we had to kill them and take their land because we're the victims. But more importantly, we give them unchecked power, endless supply of money, military. Oh yeah. Genocide? No problem. Here's $21 billion to execute a genocide. That's what Joe Biden did. Donald Trump, oh, you want to start more wars? I'll help you start more wars. I'll give you $13 billion and our entire military to attack Iran twice. Meanwhile, I'll look the other ways. You take southern Lebanon, western Syria. When you enable fascism, you get fascism. And that's what's happened to Israel. And it's partly the fault of our government for enabling this kind of out of control behavior.
Yeah, I totally agree. When a country is treated with immunity after carrying out war crimes, they're gonna think that they can do no wrong. And that's not just a message that's absorbed by the government of Israel, it's absorbed by members of Israel's society. And it's sad to see how much things have been radicalized, but the facts are the facts, and that's what we're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, last two things here, Anna. So one is, look, the Israelis think that, and sometimes Jewish Americans think, oh, we're getting picked on unfairly. No, we're saying fascism can go anywhere. What the Israelis are saying is, yes, all human beings are susceptible to fascism except us.
Right.
We're the only ones who are immune from it, and we're golden and different, and some Israelis believe superior, right? And hence but saying that you're, now most, again, I'll repeat, no Jewish American I know believes this at all. But are there people in Israel that believe that they are the chosen people, the Übermensch? Yeah, of course. There's tons of them. They're religious fundamentalists. Almost all the settlers believe that God promised them the entire Middle East 3,000 years ago. And Gott mit uns, the God is with them, and they are the chosen superior people. So that's not even all Israelis, and certainly very, very few Jews here in America. But is there a giant contingent that believes that in Israel? Yes. Should we enable that? No, we shouldn't enable that. That only makes things worse. But the last thing is a question for you, Anna. The polling in the north looks like it's disastrous for Netanyahu, but couldn't that also be because they're the ones having to go into the shelters all the time? Is there any chance that they're getting tired of war?
Well, I mean, these are the people in the north who are unhappy with the fact, yes, that they keep going into shelters. There's no question about that. But that they've gone through all of this and Hezbollah has not been defeated. In fact, in recent weeks, Hezbollah has actually done a significant amount of damage to the IDF and has killed quite a few IDF soldiers. And so the frustration is over, in their eyes, the sacrifices they've made, even though they've gotten really nothing in return. They feel that Hezbollah hasn't been defeated. They've won nothing over carrying out these in their eyes, military operations. The truth is, it's ethnic cleansing of southern Lebanon. And so, they want this to be over, but they want it to be over with all the gains that they've been promised.
Yeah. Sorry that you haven't been able to take more territory yet in self-defense. And again, the fascists in Germany thought that they needed Lebensraum, breathing space. And if you're offended that I'm comparing the two different sets of fascists, that's on you, that's not on me. That's kind of your problem. And people saying, well, yeah, it looks like exactly like fascism, but you're not allowed to say that because Israel gets special immunity. You're not getting what we're saying. Constantly saying that Israel is the only country that can't be criticized, that can't be called fascist, that can't be this or that, is what's led to this problem in the first place. No, we need to treat everyone equally and with justice. I know that as an Israeli, that must be super painful for you to hear, but sorry, the rest of humanity is not going to agree to you guys getting different rules than everyone else.
Exactly, universal standards are supposed to be universal. All right, we got to take a break, but when we come back for the second hour, we're going to switch gears a little bit and cover an incredibly important story about some of the deliberations within the Trump White House about invoking the Insurrection Act and possibly even suspending habeas corpus. I'll give you the details when we come back. Don't miss it.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe in it. And I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
No part of Gaza has been left unscathed. Ain't a whole lot left. I don't know why they need any more bombs. Let us be clear. The United States provided $18 billion in military aid to Israel. Netanyahu, indiscriminate bombardment, have killed more than 50,000 civilians, 60% of whom are women, children, paramedics, and journalists. All of this is against basic human decency. You don't starve children with absolutely no humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. It is a war crime. It is illegal for the United States government to provide Israel with more offensive weapons. History will not forgive us.
We've been on our phones too much. I feel like we just need to touch grass or something.
I told you. I mean, you know what? Let's actually do it. Let's touch the grass. Whoa. Andrew Yang? It's not racist, right? It's him.
Yes, it is I, Andrew Yang, out here giving money away as usual.
Wait, but literally?
Do you use a phone? Noble Mobile will cut your wireless bill in half every month, and you get paid even more if you log off, look up, and touch grass.
Oh, I actually have some grass if you...
I don't think that's the kind of grass.
Not that kind of grass, unfortunately.
Whoa, wait, what the...
Whoa. I guess that kind of grass works too. All grass works.
All grass and we get cash?
Wait, did you see that, babe?
Noble Mobile, make it rain, girl, make it rain, make it. That didn't rain so good, but now it's raining good.
Corruption, injustice, the system is rigged against you. Every day we're blasted by a flurry of terrible news from every angle, which can make it challenging to stay positive and know how to fight back. The Damage Report is your solution. I'm Johnny DeRola, and my daily morning show cuts through the noise and exposes the real damage being done to our country, the world, and how we can fight back against it. Corporate greed crushing workers? We'll name names. Politicians selling you out for their corporate overlords? We've got the receipts. Climate disaster, economic collapse, the rise of fascism. No spin, no establishment talking points, just the truth that you need to survive and resist. But it's not all doom and gloom. We'd love to have you join the Dragon Squad, our community of positive-minded activists who turn the day's news into positive action. With new episodes every weekday, listen to The Damage Report to get honest news, unflinching commentary, and daring coverage you won't find anywhere else. Listen to The Damage Report on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, because understanding the damage is the first step to fixing it.
The United States and Israel got spanked. Bad.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, now this is going to be a tough one. Trosophilus, for millennials.
Nailed it. I think that was right.
Okay, so it was a very long YouTube handle. Hard to tell which one it is, but thank you for upgrading your membership, which you could also do through the join button on YouTube. You're amazing for doing that, and we appreciate it and we need it. So you really carry us on your shoulders, all of you watching. You guys are awesome. Okay, let's do the next story. So, turns out the Trump White House was considering suspending habeas corpus. Well, not a big deal. It's only the cornerstone of Western civilization. And there was one person in particular who also wanted to do the Insurrection Act. And that person is very dangerous. Let's find out who it is. Anna, what do you got?
Yes, indeed, he is. In fact, he's a figure within the Trump administration who I've been warning about since he identified himself in 2024 as a post-liberal Republican. So I'll give you the details on who that is in just a minute. But first, this is a pretty extensive report by the New York Times. Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan co-wrote this piece. And it does show that on 2 different occasions, you had Trump administration officials, Stephen Miller in particular, pushing for the suspension of habeas corpus in order to fast track President Trump's deportation policies. Okay, so both ideas, luckily, were turned down, or at least there were figures within the Trump administration who shockingly were against this, provided their advice, and urged against doing it. And the administration listened. So let's start with the suspension of habeas corpus. So it would specifically impact the habeas corpus rights of immigrants who have been detained by ICE and are set for deportation. Now, as we know, for the immigrants who have been detained by ICE, they have legal recourse that they can tap into in order to challenge their detainment and possible deportation. That slows down the process of deportations, which is specifically why the Trump administration, Stephen Miller in particular, floated the idea of suspending it for immigrants, which is unconstitutional. There is quite a bit of case law, including Supreme Court rulings indicating that habeas corpus is not just a right afforded to the American people, it's also a right afforded to everyone on US soil, including undocumented immigrants. Now, the suspension of habeas corpus, if carried out, locked up immigrants would be blocked from receiving hearings or even from seeking court orders to prevent their removal from the country. This was an opportunity for Trump not only to speed up deportations, but also to assert vastly expanded power over a legal system that was getting in his way. Oh, that pesky legal system. Oh, liberal democratic values, they're always getting in my way. Well, that's kind of the point, Trump. And remember, some might say, well, who cares? Why don't you suspend habeas corpus when it comes to undocumented immigrants who have been detained by ICE? Well, you're making the assumption that ICE detained the right people, or these individuals are actually in the country illegally. As we have learned, certainly with the case of Abrego Garcia, sometimes they accidentally detain the wrong people and deport them, right? So you have to have legal recourse available or afforded to individuals who have been detained. Protecting their rights is just as important as protecting our rights. Now, disturbingly, the New York Times also reported that in the wake of the wide-scale protests that were taking place following the fatal shootings of Alex Preddy. There was also Renee Good, who was shot and killed by ICE in Minnesota. There were huge protests in response to that. At that point, there were discussions about invoking the Insurrection Act, which would in effect empower Trump to deploy the military against protesters. Now, this was also something that Stephen Miller had floated to Trump, knowing that Trump was thinking about doing this in response to BLM protests in his first term. But what was really interesting about this, Cenk, is the fact that the person really pushing for it internally was Vice President J.D. Vance. So a few days following the Preddy shooting, as these protests were underway, Vance and Stephen Miller attended their usual White House meeting. Susie Wiles was there. Vance got to the point. They needed to invoke the Insurrection Act swiftly to crush the unrest in Minnesota. It would be painful in the short term, he said, but the message it would send that paid agitators could not get away with disrupting ICE operations would make sure no one tried it again. Now, I want to be clear, that claim that the protesters are paid agitators is completely unfounded. There isn't a shred of evidence to support that claim by Vance. But this is unsurprising to me, given the fact that, again, Vance has identified himself as a post-liberal Republican, meaning he doesn't necessarily believe in liberal democratic values. Now, thankfully, there was the White House counsel, Cenk, and then that's David Warrington, and then also the White House staff secretary, Will Scharf. These two were pushing back against both actions and they succeeded. I'll give you their arguments in just a minute, but before I do, I'm so curious what you think about what Stephen Miller and JD Vance were trying to do here.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised by some of the people that did the pushback and won. Stephen Chung, actually, who's like a madman, sided with the correct position for reasons we'll explain a little bit. But Will Scharf's really important and interesting. He's actually a rare, effective lawyer on Trump's side. And to give you a sense of how right-wing he is, he's the one who successfully argued the presidential immunity case. The president should basically be above the law. And he also successfully argued that Donald Trump shouldn't be indicted for stealing the top secrets and leaving them in a Mar-a-Lago bathroom. So the president is allowed to steal any secret he wants out on his way out the White House door, apparently. So this guy is not a little right-wing. He's massively right-wing. He's for huge executive power. And in fact, one of the cases he made was, if we do this, we'll ironically lose presidential power, not gain it, because the Supreme Court has been so crystal clear that we cannot take away habeas corpus rights, and pretty recently too, because of the Guantanamo cases. And he said, so we're gonna get embarrassed in the courts, we're gonna lose presidential power. And I don't know if you guys know this, but this is a cornerstone of Western civilization. He went back and explained to all of them how this started in England and how our entire society and values are based on habeas corpus. So that was a little bit shocking that there's anyone in the White House who actually cares about things that are true and that are part of our values as in the West. And then he said, look, it's gonna be terrible PR and what are we gonna gain from it? And that's where Stephen Chung apparently joined him. Now to turn to the bad guys, so no one is surprised that Stephen Miller was, leading the parade of the bad guys. And he gets into office and immediately he's like, let's trash the Constitution, trash Western civilization. By the way, my secret theory on that is Stephen Miller wants to get rid of habeas corpus, and some others do as well, because at some point they knew that Israel would go so far and that they'd have to round people up here. And they didn't want them to be able to challenge their detentions because arresting people on behalf of Israel is maniacal and would not hold up in court. So that's I think why he wanted to take the rights away, but no one's surprised by that. To your point finally, Anna, on JD Vance, no, after reading this story, the jury is in. JD Vance is super dangerous. Don't listen to any garbage about how he's secretly against war or secretly this or that. No, when no one was looking, he was the guy who pushed most for getting rid of constitutional protections and American freedom and rights, and to take away the rule of law so that they could impose some form of authoritarian rule here.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Look, I want to take a break so we can bring Trita Parsi on to give us some of his expertise on this allegedly impending memorandum of understanding, which paves the way for a peace deal with the United States and Iran. So just stick around for that. We'll be right back.
We've been on our phones too much. I feel like we just need to touch grass or something.
I told you. I mean, you know what? Let's actually do it. Let's touch the grass. Whoa. Andrew Yang? It's not racist, right? It's him.
Yes, it is I, Andrew Yang, out here giving money away as usual.
Wait, but literally?
Do you use a phone? Noble Mobile will cut your wireless bill in half every month, and you get paid even more if you log off, look up, and touch grass.
Oh, I actually have some grass if you...
I don't think that's the kind of grass.
Not that kind of grass, unfortunately.
Whoa, wait, what the...
Whoa.
I guess that kind of grass works too. All grass works.
All grass and we get cash?
Wait, did you see that, babe?
No more room. Make it rain, girl, make it rain, make it. That didn't rain so good, but now it's raining good.
Corruption, injustice, the system is rigged against you. Every day we're blasted by a flurry of terrible news from every angle, which can make it challenging to stay positive and know how to fight back. The Damage Report is your solution. I'm Johnny DeRola, and my daily morning show cuts through the noise and exposes the real damage being done to our country, the world, and how we can fight back against it. Corporate greed crushing workers? We'll name names. Politicians selling you out for their corporate overlords? We've got the receipts. Climate disaster, economic collapse, the rise of fascism. No spin, no establishment talking points, just the truth that you need to survive and resist. But it's not all doom and gloom. We'd love to have you join the Dragon Squad, our community of positive-minded activists who turn the day's news into positive action. With new episodes every weekday, listen to The Damage Report to get honest news, unflinching commentary, and daring coverage you won't find anywhere else. Listen to The Damage Report on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, because understanding the damage is the first step to fixing it.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Now we've got a great guest for you guys. Anna, take it from here.
All right, joining us to talk about the impending memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran is Trita Parsi, the co-founder and the executive vice president of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Welcome, Trita, so good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, really appreciate it.
I want to start off by actually asking you about what happened over the weekend before this big announcement by both the United States and Iran that both parties have agreed to the framework of the MOU. It appears there was an effort, as you wrote about on Substack, by the Israelis to sabotage impending peace. And they did so by crossing one of Iran's red lines, bombing the suburbs of Beirut. Now, there is some reporting from sources like Jeremy Scahill, for instance, indicating that Iran was actually able to achieve additional concessions from the US due to Israel's strikes on Beirut. And I'm curious if you know anything about that and what some of those concessions may have been.
I've not been able to confirm that with the US side, but I've heard it as well from both regional actors as well as from the Iranian side, or people who are talking to the Iranian side on this specific issue. And I don't find it surprising at all, because I think it was quite clear to the United States that the Iranians were going to respond. The Iranians had huge difficulty and challenges getting into a consensus position or close to a consensus position to agree to this deal. It's taken way longer than Trump wanted. This was his birthday. They were running out of time. And the Israelis very deliberately struck the suburbs of Beirut, knowing very well that it wasn't just Iran's red line, it was America's red line as well. And I thought it was interesting that Trump not only came out and said this should not have ever happened, but also specifically said whatever Hezbollah had done before was nothing, and it did not justify this type of an escalation by the Israelis, because Hezbollah and Israel have been hitting at each other throughout this entire period, yesterday, the day before. But it was southern Lebanon, it was them striking Israeli forces in Lebanon or in northern Israel. But both of them stayed away from an escalation that could have prompted an attack by the Israelis on Beirut itself. Nevertheless, the Israelis did so because they wanted to sabotage the deal, and they wanted to sabotage a deal that would put these restrictions on Israel. And, you know, you only have to go and peruse some of the Israeli media today to see the complete public meltdown that is happening over there over the fact that Trump has now signed on to this MOU.
So it's dessert. It's good to see, actually, them freaking out and panicking over possible peace. But go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so Trita, I'm curious about the end game here. So Iran and America both seem to want to end this war for understandable reasons. So does the whole world. Obviously, Israel doesn't. So that's all clear. And so Israel's basically said, no, we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop in Lebanon. And their defense minister even added Syria and Gaza. And that was also clear. So all that's baked in. So when we get to a deal on Friday, let's assume that happens, because it seems like Trump's pretty motivated to do that. And then Israel just flat out never listens to the deal and just keeps going and going. They'll say, oh, it's self-defense. We all know this, right? It's tired old routine. Okay, that's where I pause and I go, I'm not sure what happens next. Because Iran is insisting that Lebanon is part of the deal. Israel's saying, no, it's not. America's saying, yes, it is. Okay, and then what happens?
So if the Israelis, so I don't know exactly at what moment in the MOU it necessitates that it is all of Lebanon and that, the Iranian red line is moved from Beirut further south. But bottom line is, if the Israelis keep on striking and go all the way to Beirut, for instance, in the early days, I do not believe that the Iranians will refrain from attacking. I think they will strike. And that puts the ball back into the US's court. Will the United States enter the war defensively or offensively on the Israeli side? And I think Trump right now certainly doesn't want that. And I think what he should do already now is to make it very clear to the Israelis, if you start a war that we do not want, you should know we will not enter that war on your side. We will not support you. We will not fight with you. We will not shoot down any missiles. Because it's only when the Israelis fully understand that they will realize there is no value in starting a war in the hope of dragging the US into that war if it's become perfectly clear the US will not get dragged into that war. The only reason why they're incentivized to do it right now, because there is a high likelihood that the US will get dragged in. But if they know that they cannot drag the US into it, then I think they will also refrain from attacking, or at least it diminishes the likelihood.
Okay, wait, you said something important there. Sorry, let me follow up on that. So are you saying Iran's red line is Beirut and not southern Lebanon? So there's a scenario here where Israel keeps southern Lebanon?
No, I don't think that there's a scenario in which they will stay in southern Lebanon and continue to strike at the end of the MOU. I don't know, however, if the language in the agreement, and if it's clear enough so that both sides have the same interpretation, means that it will go into effect right away for all of Lebanon. Perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't. I just don't know for certain. What we do know right now is that the Iranians treat Beirut as a red line. But when that red line extends to all of Lebanon is unclear to me. That it will extend to all of Lebanon is clear to me. It will happen. I just don't know exactly in what phase that happens, or if it is right away when the MOU is signed. But I don't think the Iranians at all will tolerate that the Israelis continue to strike at Lebanon. Of course, we have seen before that there could have been exchanges of fire, etc., that are tolerated in a ceasefire, but nothing very extensive, I suspect.
So it's really interesting because the political pressures on the ground are very different in Israel versus the United States. The American people want an end to the war, so Trump feels the political pressure in that regard. Obviously, his donors want something entirely different. They want a continuation of the war, but that's an ongoing problem we have in the United States, not just in regard to Iran and questions of war and peace, but on every possible issue. The donors tend to be at war with what the American people want. But in Israel, it's entirely different. There seems to be growing radicalization among the Israeli people in regard to wanting more conflict, more war, more border expansion. And with the impending elections, which could replace Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister, you can really see the rhetoric of Netanyahu's challengers getting amped up in terms of calling for more war and a more adversarial relationship with or against Iran. I want to give you one example and get your reaction to it. So let's actually go to B2 here. This is Naftali Bennett on Piers Morgan's show today.
I would say that Iran is very similar to the Soviet Union of the 80s. It's a very disconnected, corrupt, incompetent regime that doesn't care about its own people. And it's destined to collapse. I believe that soon in Israel, there'll be a new government. Hopefully I'll lead that new government. And I want to tell the Iranian regime from here, the regime, I'm going to be your worst nightmare ever. I won't relent until we free your people, ensure you don't have a nuclear weapon. So you've got no hope. We won't let up on this effort.
So you can hear from that rhetoric that, I'm going to go further than Netanyahu. I'm much stronger when it comes to questions of national security. Is there any, because I have no doubt that they are going to try to sabotage potential peace. Is there any indication, I'm looking for a statement, a shred of evidence that Trump wouldn't back Israel should Israel, attack Beirut, Iran responds? Do you really think there's a possibility that Trump won't aid Israel in the middle of that kerfuffle?
I do. I think there is that possibility. Whether that is the more likely scenario or not is difficult to assess at this point. But I think that Trump is really looking at this as being part of his legacy. We see these tweets today that no one else could have done peace. Let me, as a parenthesis, say something on that. In the JCPOA, the Obama administration was very careful to never talk about that deal as if it was a peace deal and as if it actually was aimed or would transform US-Iran relations. They try to sell it solely as a nuclear deal and really stay away from any rhetoric or even an expression of an ambition or hope that it could lead to something bigger than that. Trump's approach is completely opposite. They seem to not want to talk about the details of the deal, but instead talk about how it's going to transform US-Iran relations and the entire region. I actually appreciate that ambition. Whether they will back it up with the measures that are needed to make it happen is a different story. But I do think it would be a waste to strike a deal, but then keep the rest of the enmity in place. And that enmity then will ensure that in a couple of years, we'll be back where we are today with another war, another confrontation of some kind. So I do think that the ambition of wanting to make something bigger out of this is important. I think Trump thinks that this is part of his legacy. And the question then is, and I think you're absolutely right to ask that question, will he fight for it? And will he fight the Israelis for it? I think there is a likelihood that he would. And there's a significant likelihood that at the end of the day, he may back down. Many, many people believe that he will back down. But I think it's worth to see whether it goes that way, because I do think that some of the things we've seen so far is really not helping Netanyahu's case, to be frank with you. Yeah. It is really, and it's also taking off the blinders of a lot of folks in the administration and a realization that at the end of the day, to be friends with Israel means that the United States needs to have this permanent enmity with a large number of states in the region, not just Iran. And if that is the premise that we want to have that friendship with Israel, at least we should have a conversation about that. And I think to some extent, at least quietly, that those conversations are now starting to take place.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by that. Like, do they? Okay, you know what? That's going to force me to ask a different question because of that. Like, to me, Israel runs Washington through a system of legalized bribery. So are there really people who genuinely thought Israel was our ally and that they wanted peace and they were just doing self-defense? And now they've woken up and realized, oh my God, maybe Israel's not doing self-defense. Is that a thing that actually exists in Washington?
I don't know how to answer that, Shank. I mean, come on. What do you want me to say to that?
No, but it was a genuine question. Like, I can't believe anybody would be that silly. I mean, I just assumed that they're all.
Look, I gotta tell you, there's plenty of people. I mean, when you watch that clip of Naftali Bennett, it just feels like he's in a completely different planet. Mm-hmm. First of all, in the sense of thinking that there's any appetite in the United States for more of this kind amongst the American public. Secondly, to believe that Israel is some sort of a liberator of the Iranian people. I mean, he genuinely seemed to believe that. A guy is living in a different universe. No. And there's plenty of people in Washington that are living in a different universe when it comes to this, I think.
I just think, you know what, Trita? Sorry, Cenk. No, there's Naftali Bennett said something else in the context of that interview. It's a short clip, but I think it's important to play it because it does bolster what Trita is saying here. Because for Naftali Bennett, what he wants to prevent is Iran having a means to defend themselves. And you're about to hear him make the case in this clip. Watch.
I believe that America still retains tremendous leverage, but the jury's out. We'll see in a period of 60 days that we need to achieve the objectives of taking away the nuclear uranium stockpile, ensuring that Iran can't build a shield of immunity with thousands or tens of thousands of ballistic missiles.
This is now the second time he has said on Piers Morgan's show that we need to make sure that Iran has no way of defending themselves, right? They don't have a deterrent, that they don't have a so-called shield of immunity, which basically open season when it comes to Israeli aggression against Iran with no means of Iran being able to defend themselves.
Absolutely. It just means that Israel can do whatever it wants because no one has the ability to be able to inflict the cost on Israel and limit its maneuverability. And again, also what he's doing is trying to set forward the type of criteria that Trump then has to achieve. He has to get rid of the missiles. They're not even part of the discussions, to the best of my knowledge. The Iranians will never, ever, and no rational state would ever back down on its missiles, because it was the only thing that truly ended up being effective within their defenses together with the drones. The idea that they would give up that when that is what saved them in these last two wars is completely nonsensical.
Yeah.
So there's no scenario in which that will happen. And there's no scenario in which Trump will get a deal if he goes for that. Now, he may try. I doubt it, because I think he's gotten close to some sort of a deal and it's going to get more realistic. And he also understands that the Israelis, even if he were to achieve that, which he won't, but even if he were to achieve that, the Israelis would then throw out something else that he also has to achieve. So the bottom line is, whose interest are you going to pursue? America's interest or Israel's interest? Israel's interest is to give you a laundry list of things that are unachievable in order to make sure that you fail and that you don't get a deal and that we go back to war.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised to find out that I'm the most cynical person on this panel, but but I don't think that there are almost any honest people in Washington who think that Israel's our beloved saintly ally. I think they're all know that Israel's a terrible government that's hell-bent on war. They just support them because they're getting paid to, or they have a natural inclination towards Israel and they want America to serve Israel. The idea that there is like these naive people going around Washington, oh, I thought they were our allies. I don't know. I just don't believe that at all. But anyway,
I agree with you. I'm not trying to say that they're all naive. I do think that they live in different universes in which it's not naivete, it's that you have these insane blinders on. I mean, we've seen that on so many different issues, from Ukraine to others, in which some people just seem to be immune to reality.
No, totally. I mean, I've heard people in Washington say, can you believe Ro Khanna thinks he's going to run for president and be against Israel? Like, that's 80% of Democratic voters are against Israel. But these morons in Washington are never going to get it. Anyways, it was going to lead up to a question. The question is this. So is a hybrid possible here where Trump goes, look, I got to go. I'm pulling out the military. I already have a peace deal. I'm going to get a Nobel Peace Prize or a FIFA Peace Prize second time, whatever it is, right? But I understand you, poor Israel has to take more land in the Middle East. So why don't we give you a gift of 20 billion, 200 billion, merge our militaries, etc. So I'm leaving for now, but I will give you like all of our treasure instead.
Unfortunately, Cenk, that is actually a very significant possibility. That is the blueprint of almost every other deal that has been made, in which whenever something is done that is not to the interest of the Israelis or at times other states in the region, there is this belief that, okay, well then now you have to compensate them by giving them something else. Oftentimes it comes at the expense of the poor Palestinians, who always draw the shortest straw. You had it incidentally when Hillary Clinton was running in 2016, in which Jake Sullivan, who was deemed to be her national security advisor, gave that speech at the Truman Institute saying that because of the JCPOA, the United States is now going to compensate some of the GCC countries and give them all kinds of different goodies because the US under Obama had struck a deal that served US interest and prevented the Iranians from having a pathway to a nuclear bomb. And as a result, we now owed some of these other countries some compensation, which I found at the time also to be extremely disturbing. But that type of a mindset is very common, and I don't find it unlikely at all that if Trump tries to insulate this one issue and he doesn't want the Israelis to sabotage it, he will try to balance it by giving the Israelis a bunch of other things that will probably create a lot of problems elsewhere.
This just came to my attention, reported by Barak Ravid over at Axios. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, Trita, but apparently there are some voices within the Trump administration who are kind of setting the stage for this deal to fail. CIA Director Ratcliffe, for instance, isn't the only skeptic in Trump's top team. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth have both expressed concerns and raised questions about the deal in internal discussions, while VP Vance and US envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner advocated for it. There's a lot I have a hard time believing in just that one excerpt from Ravid's article. But your thoughts on that? And obviously I'm asking you to speculate, but do you think the pro-war voices within the administration might have enough sway to encourage Trump to renege?
Look, first of all, that does jive with conversations I've had myself. And it's clear that there is a faction that is in favor of it. Witkoff is in favor of it. JD, of course, is as well. And there are others that are more skeptical, and whether their skepticism is rooted because they want to get a better deal or because they want to sabotage this one or they want to carry some water for the Israelis within that debate. Unclear to me what really is motivating them. And then there's others who also may be raising some red flags because they're worried that some of the US's nuclear demands are unrealistic. And as a result, they're saying, that needs to be tempered if you actually want to get a deal. But the fact that there's going to be a fight within the administration on this issue and that some people will try to either sabotage it or pin this on JD Vance in order to make sure that this does not end up becoming a win for him, I suspect that will absolutely happen. Similar things are happening on the Iranian side. For the last 2 days, there were demonstrations outside of the Iranian foreign ministry calling for the death of the foreign minister and the parliament speaker because of their role in negotiating this deal. So they have their ultra hardliners as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. And it does worry me deeply because this is how in the past Trump has backtracked on things he already agreed on. The negotiators come with some mandate, they manage to secure it, comes back, then it gets criticized by a donor, by Miriam Adelson, by Mark Levine, or someone from within the administration, and then Trump backtracks on it and the whole thing falls apart. That risk is absolutely present in this situation.
Yeah, look, I think all those guys that were named are Miriam's boys. Marco Rubio and has taken in a tremendous amount of money from the Israeli lobby, from Larry Ellison himself, into his super PACs. Hegseth wrote in his book about how the IDF should be in the streets of America, like a total Israeli lunatic. And the CIA has been, in my opinion, from what we can see from the outside, has been working for the Israelis for a long, long time. So I'm not surprised by any of that. I always find that to be baked into the equation. The fact that Trump is even thinking about getting past that is what's interesting and different here. But I think we kind of solved that. I'm sure that what you said earlier is right, that if Trump decides to leave, which I now have at least 55%, that he's going to compensate the Israelis because we owe them. No one ever explains why we owe them, and say, okay, I know you guys are going to get into a war with Iran. Here, I'll rob more tens of billions of dollars from the American taxpayers and give it to you. Miriam, please, you can continue Miriam's war, but just with our money instead of our military. But okay, speaking of the Israeli thugs in this country, so I was banned from the United Kingdom. The Free Press wrote a story about how you should be deported, Trita. So what happened? What was their argument for deporting you? It's a hilarious thing to ask, and what ultimately came of it.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to on air thank you guys and particularly Anna for the fantastic monologue that she did in defense of me and against the very principles that this article was based on. And it's actually there was a lot of public outcry against this, and we had nothing to do with it. I was on your show the night before. We never even talked about this. I didn't tell you that I thought that this article was going to come out. And I think that public outcry had something to do with the fact that the State Department came out a couple of hours later and denied the story. And I'm not entirely sure what happened, but I have theory with some level of corroboration for. I do believe that there were elements inside the State Department who wanted to do this. The Laura Loomers of the world have been tweeting and calling for my deportation for a couple of weeks now, perhaps 2 months or so. And I think that there were some people inside that thought that an additional hit piece could be helpful towards pushing the bureaucratic process internally in the right direction from their standpoint and actually make this happen. But there never was actually an investigation. They were trying to trigger an investigation, and they felt that the piece would help do so. But it did the opposite, because there was this public outcry and there was also opposition from within the Trump administration. And that's why the very unusual thing happened in which the State Department came out and denied this and said that there's no plans to deport me, at least not for now, I think they said, in a statement that they sent out to a lot of media. And it's very unusual for the State Department to do this because they usually don't comment on these things. I mean, you can imagine how they would spend all of their days just commenting and denying or corroborating stories that are put out in the media about what is or what is not happening in specific cases. But they did so. And I think it was precisely because of the fact that it was squashed and they recognized that, this was not true. And there had been someone in the State Department, an unnamed source of the Free Press, that had claimed this. I don't say that I think the issue is over with. I think these people who are looking to silence me, and they tried to do so for more than 20 years, are not going to give up. It's just that they have now elevated it towards deportation, not just cancellation and trying to make me toxic. And they will continue. I think they will be relentless. But this specific round, it seems like it actually backfired on them.
Imagine trying to make a guy who's dedicated his life to pushing for restraint in foreign policy and peace around the world. Like, imagine trying to demonize that guy. And that's what's happening with this targeting of you, Trita. It's so ridiculous. And I'm not at all surprised that there was backlash to Jay Solomon's reporting in the Free Press. You make your case on left-wing shows, on right-wing shows. You've been on Steve Bannon's War Room. You've been on Democracy Now! Obviously, you come on our show. And your message is consistent, but it's a message that really does instill fear among neoconservatives, war hawks, and the pro-Israel crowd. And so revoking your green card and deporting you because you advocate for peace would just be the ultimate, in my opinion, dismantling of what we purport to be liberal democratic values here in the West.
No, I think that's right. And I wrote about it on the Substack as well, that I think that one of the things that really is threatening the uniparty war machine is precisely the fact that at the Quincy Institute, we have tried to build these bridges between the anti-war left and the anti-war right. And we see a lot of commonalities, and unfortunately the collaboration oftentimes has been episodic, and we try to establish an institution that would make sure that it's more enduring and systematic collaboration between the two sides, just as much as there is so much collaboration between the Democratic war hawks and the Republican war hawks. And this is a threat to them, I think.
Absolutely.
And as you pointed out, the episode on me with Tucker that was taped early this morning just dropped, I think, half hour or so ago. So we are taking our message to both sides. We actually don't see two sides, and we see one side. It's just that they have differences of opinion on other issues. But on foreign policy, there's a significant convergence between the left and right on a lot of things. And we want to capitalize on that and strengthen that. And I think you see it very clearly amongst younger demographics, in which their foreign policy outlook tends to differ very little in general, despite the fact that they may have completely different perspectives on other issues. And this is absolutely a threat to the war machine, because it was very useful for them to have kind of isolated anti-war people on the left over here and isolated anti-war people on the right over there, and making sure that they wouldn't have the capacity of building these synergies. And I want to commend you guys, because I think you guys have done the same as well. Anna, you were on Tucker's show, and Cenk as well, etc. And you broke down a lot of these different barriers. That's exactly the kind of things that they fear.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think that it's a coincidence at all that you and I are both adamantly for peace. Israel, of course, doesn't want peace. They want endless war. And you and I are people who have gone on left and right shows. Tucker Carlson, Sean Ryan, so many others. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's come on this show, etc. And for Israel, the biggest threat in the world is Americans uniting in favor of peace. And so that's why there's threats of deporting you, banning me from the UK. But Mark Levin says almost daily that I should be deported, even though I'm a US citizen. And I would argue that I'm not sure that he is. But anyways, okay, we gotta go. Trita, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. From the Quincy Institute, and everybody check out Trita Parsi's Substack as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep. All right, guys, we'll be right back. All right, let's go to YouTube members. Ronald Fan says, hey, TYT family, and to you, Cenk and Anna, a wrestling analogy. If we don't stop John Cena from winning the game, how can we end needless wars? And you, Anna, you look so beautiful like a butterfly. Okay, fun. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and I like to see an analogy. JD Pro 2222 writes in, Trump, quote, a ceasefire doesn't actually mean firing stops. He actually did say that. No, but that is exactly what it means. So you're right to bring that up as Trump is bragging about the ceasefire. Bach says, I'm calling BS. I will not be holding my breath. But Roland One says, what I've learned, sexism, racism, religious bigotry, nationalism, all driven by classism, are how the financial elite get us to divide and control ourselves while paying them to do just that. Billion%, brother, billion%. All of this is the culture wars, identity politics, is to divide us so that the elites can rule us. Ricky Rage DeRozio writes in on Super Chat. Sinclair Lewis had said, when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in a flag and carrying a cross. But as in today, it is also wrapped in the Israeli flag as well. Yeah, definitely. MD Turner in Oz writes in all caps, stop all funding to our greatest ally, as an ally, but a lie. I like that Turner phrase. Jonathan Ayala writes in on Twitch, of course IDF cheerleaders are against peace, they're against anything moral. Who's a boomer says Israel will keep doing what it wants. K-Dragon battling on TYT.com. Well, nope, I ran out of time. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let's go to the next story now.
Minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which in fact we are now quite concerned Russian troops, Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
That was Victoria Nuland, who was then the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs back in 2022 under the Biden administration. And people thought, that's outrageous, that's a conspiracy theory. Is it? Well, outgoing DNI director Tulsi Gabbard just released some classified intelligence that leads us to believe maybe not a conspiracy theory. Anna, what's the real story?
That's right, Cenk. And let me just note that Victoria Nuland has been a huge cheerleader for keeping the war in Ukraine going. In fact, she just got her ass handed to her in a debate featuring John Mearsheimer. But I digress. Let's get to what we've learned thanks to former DNI Gabbard declassifying some documents that show that in fact, we have been funding biolabs in Ukraine and across the globe, by the way, which is incredibly dangerous since they're dealing with gain of function, scientific work. They're dealing with incredibly dangerous viruses and pathogens. And in the middle of a war where one of our adversaries seems to have the leg up, that's an incredibly dangerous situation. So here's what we know based on what Tulsi Gabbard has basically put out and declassified. And let me just note, I think this was also her way of saying, I kind of failed in stopping the war against Iran, but remember that whole biolab thing? Well, now I'm delivering the goods. So she announced in a press release that Gabbard is revealing new evidence of longstanding US government funding, more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries, which is insane if you ask me. These biolabs include labs in Ukraine, which may be at risk of compromise due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. For example, the intelligence community previously warned that a US-funded biolab in Ukraine likely housed dangerous pathogens and remained vulnerable to long-standing threats of Russian attack, seizure, or damage. Many of these US government-funded biolabs are currently or have previously engaged in research using hazardous and highly contagious pathogens, in some cases to include dangerous gain-of-function research with very little visibility or oversight. And she's totally right about the lack of visibility, the lack of transparency by our own government in regard to funding these laboratories. Now, what specifically did Tulsi manage to reveal through declassifying these documents? Well, the documents do allege that the US helped build and support over 40 biolabs in Ukraine, which included especially dangerous pathogen certification, EDP, and repository of biological weapons and disease-causing pathogens, including anthrax, tularemia, tuberculosis, swine fever, new cattle's disease, MERS, SARS, Marburg, Ebola, Lassa, and the plague and rickettsia. So, some of these, including, by the way, Ebola, incredibly dangerous. And okay, yeah, we can fund biological labs in other countries, which is a bad idea since we don't have full control of foreign countries. So what if there's some sort of revolution and there's a government we don't like in charge, and you have 40 biolabs in a country that we funded, that we propped up? Now those biological weapons are in the hands of a government that is adversarial to the United States. Like, this is so stupid. And besides which, Cenk, as we have learned, there could be a lab leak of these dangerous pathogens, and we could find ourselves with another COVID-19 type pandemic. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so people are continuing to call it a conspiracy theory, and I want to separate out two different things here. The Russians said that this was one of the reasons they invaded. I don't believe that at all. I think the Russians were going to invade no matter what. Partly out of the provocation of pushing NATO right up to their borders. We've gone through that a million times. But once he lined up his military there, Putin was going in. So separate that out. But I don't understand why people just continue to lie in like demonstrably false ways. They're like, look at Tulsi Gabbard releasing intelligence that shows that there was biolabs. What a stupid conspiracy theory. What do you mean? She released the intelligence and it turns out there were biolabs. How could it still be a conspiracy theory? I just don't get it. I don't know. They like, well, in Washington, this happens all the time where you show them an apple and they're like, no, it's not there. That's a monkey. You're like, what? Why are you saying things that are empirically untrue?
Well, she even released a list of some of the facilities, biolabs, that the United States has funded in Ukraine in particular. So let's take a look at graphic 5 here. This is a screenshot of the declassified document that she released. And in it, you have very specific biolabs that are named and just how much the United States has bankrolled the research in these labs, the design and construction of these labs. I mean, there's the Kherson Diagnostic Laboratory. Total cost of the laboratory was over $1.7 million, but that's just one of the 40 laboratories that the United States has funded in Ukraine. And look, not to pick on Ukraine only. I mean, this is an issue in other countries as well. We are funding and propping up biolabs in foreign countries that, again, we don't have and we shouldn't have full control of. We don't have full control of sovereign countries, nor should we seek control of sovereign countries. So allowing for the testing and the gain of function research on incredibly dangerous pathogens, testing and research on potential biological weapons in a foreign sovereign country is an incredibly dangerous thing to do, but we've been doing it, and there's been so little transparency about it that honestly, I don't begrudge people for thinking this is crazy, this sounds like a conspiracy theory, because the fact of the matter is our government has been hiding the ball. They've been lying to us. They have not been transparent with us.
Yeah, no, this is like an extra level of Kafka-esque here, because they're not even denying that it's true. So let me read Mike Levin's. This is a Democrat from California, and he summarizes what a lot of people are saying about this. He says, as far as I can tell, Tulsi's big secret biolab bombshell is recycled Kremlin propaganda. These labs were never secret.
Jeez.
No, wait. So you're saying ridiculous that they existed, and we always knew they existed. Which one is it? Did they never exist, or we always knew that they existed? So I don't think they're even trying to make sense. And
no, I mean, why would Tulsi need to declassify documents in order for the public to see the evidence that we've been funding biolabs in other countries? Come on.
Yeah, no, look, let me be, and by the way, somebody even called it a trope. I'm like, wait, how did that get involved here? Okay, so this is just crazy, right? All right, guys, we have these biolabs that we funded all across the world, and they do gain of function research. It's super dangerous, having nothing to do with any other war or any other issue. It's super dangerous. We don't control those labs, and our government keeps lying to us about it. And then when we find out, they go, "Oh, we were always open about it anyway." No, you weren't. That's not true at all. So I'm glad she released that, no matter how much flack she gets for it. I'm certainly not a Tulsi Gabbard fan, and I'm certainly not a fan of the Russian invasion, but I am a fan of the truth, and that it's true that we had biolabs there. And ironically, now they're calling it a conspiracy theory because we always knew there were biolabs that you all denied. Like I said, I don't think they're even trying to make sense anymore.
Yeah. All right, that does it for the show. The revolution is next, and I think you're gonna have a conversation with members too.
Yes, Member Mondays.
Okay.
So tyt.com/call. If you're a member, call in and you get to talk to me as soon as we come back.
Hey, do you want to participate in Member Mondays and have live on-air conversations with Cenk? Well, if you're a TYT member, you can. And that applies whether you're on tyt.com or YouTube or Twitch. Just go to this website, tyt.com/call. If you're not a member on YouTube, Twitch, or tyt.com, well, you can sign up on tyt.com right here. Otherwise, if you're already a member somewhere, click instructions. Now scroll down. The first thing you'll see is that you need Discord. What is Discord? Discord is basically a messaging app for internet communities. It has all these different channels where you can send messages or even hop on voice calls and talk to people. We have what's called our own Discord server. And the first step is to download Discord. So back at tyt.com/call, just click on discord.com or the links for the app stores. But if you're on desktop, you just click download, and then it'll download over here. Click on the link and you'll download and install Discord. It'll look something like this. Now you need to get the TYT Discord server. So at tyt.com/call, you'll see there's a direct link toward it. Click on TYT's Discord channel. And it'll take you right here. Bingo, bango, welcome. You'll see all the values and policies and everything. Now you need to connect your subscription to Discord so Discord knows you are a member someplace on the internet. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, just click user settings in this little gear wheel. Then in the menu, find where it says connections. Once you clicked on connections, click this little view more button. and you'll see YouTube and Twitch. If you're a YouTube member, click the YouTube icon. If you're a Twitch member, click the Twitch icon. Once you click, it'll open a login window and just select the email address that you use for your paid membership on YouTube or Twitch. Once you've logged in successfully, it'll give you a little message that says it's connected. At that point, you'll probably have to close Discord and reopen it, but you will see here that you are connected on Twitch or YouTube. If you're a TYT.com member, it's slightly different, but it's still very easy. If you're a TYT.com member, just scroll through the channels till you see the Verify Me channel. Click on that and enter the username that you use on TYT.com. Once you do that, a member of our customer service team will verify that you are a member on TYT.com and tell you, all set, thank you for your membership. Once you see that, you've done it. You may need to just shut down Discord, then reopen it, and you'll see all these little locked members channels. All right, so let's say it's the day of the show and you want to participate in Member Mondays. All you need to do is scroll down until you see the channel called Member Mondays Live. Click on it to enter the audience. When you're in the audience, you'll look like this. You'll be under where it says Audience. If you want to participate in the show and be on stage with Cenk, just click this little icon that says Request to Speak. And don't forget to open the chat by clicking on this little conversation bubble. And you'll be able to follow the chat as it happens and talk to Kara and try to get on stage. If Kara pulls you on stage, she'll basically just make you speak on stage. And you'll be up here and you'll be live and you'll see Cenk up here with you and Kara up here with you. Don't forget to unmute yourself so you can talk. Blah-de, 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 blah. You'll see that it's working if there's a little green thing around your face as you're talking. And yes, I'm Meghan McCain on Discord. Once you're done, you can disconnect, hang up, or Kara will move you off stage. If you're having trouble hearing or seeing, you can just click these little buttons and change what your input is and change what your output is. I'm a total dork, so I have way more inputs and outputs than you do. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on how to participate in Member Mondays. See you Monday and have a great day.
Welcome to Member Mondays, guys. So today we're only going to do a half an hour, so we're going to end it at 5:30. So I'll try to move a little quicker than we normally do. I want to say one quick thing before we get started. I think Anna covered the story of Mark Halperin and the other Washington pundits saying about how Ro Khanna has earned the ire of all of the Democrats in Washington, and they're livid with him, right? Oh, I love that. I loved it so much. Halperin's like, oh, I think Ro Khanna is going to be the next Bernie, and they're like, yeah, but don't worry, he can't win. What's the chance that somebody like Bernie can win? No way. But meanwhile, they're like, oh my God, they're so mad at him. And what were they mad at him over? Israel, Epstein files, and Graham Plattner. All things related to Israel. And remember, the people mad at Ro Khanna, not Republicans, but Democrats in Washington. That shows you why we need a revolution, a political one. Because the Democrats aren't on your side either. Secretly, they hate anyone fighting back against Israel, including their own. That's why they hate Graham Plattner. That's why they hate Ro Khanna. And so I'm looking forward to 2028, seeing how that turns out. Because that gives you a sense, oh my God, we might have a a real candidate that might actually do things in the race, which is pretty exciting. So we'll see. We'll see. A lot to go to before that happens. All right, so let's get started today. Brett's helping us out. Brett, who's on first?
Third base. I don't know. The first person up is Ryan from NH from New Hampshire. Wants to talk about the upcoming election. Ryan, you're on.
As soon as I said who's on first, I was like, here we go. Okay.
Hey, Jake.
Hey, Ryan. How you doing, brother?
How you doing, brother? Great. How about you?
Good, good. What do you got for me?
Thanks for the intro, Brett. So I think the current admin takes the if we're not cheating, we're not trying sort of approach to elections. It's pretty clear 2016, with hiding funds, meeting with Russians in Trump Tower. Pretty clear in 2020, we had false electors, and I think we, the people that care, need to figure out how they're going to cheat in 2028. Well, not just 2028, but this upcoming one in 2026. And the only thing I've come up with so far is they've got their little private military force. They know the key districts that they need to suppress. So I think we're going to see ICE arresting people and depriving them of the right to vote on election day. And it's just a question of how many and how big of an impact is it going to have. What are they going to do that is going to get people riled up and so on and so forth. But there's got to be more ways that they're rigging this, because Trump didn't even care when he was asked, I don't care about the election. So that means they've got something in the works. And I just feel like not enough people are talking about or forecasting what it's going to be. And the best thing I've come up with is, besides the usual stripping of the voting rolls, like I said, is trying to physically arrest people and deprive them of their rights.
Yeah, so Ryan,
wanted to see what you thought.
Yeah, so I've got mixed feelings about that. So are they above doing that? No, of course not. So I agree with you on that. I mean, they did the fake elector scheme in 2020. So you're certainly right to be concerned about it. And I think that they'll probably try something in 2026 as kind of a test case for 2028, testing the waters. How did that work? How was it received? Was it effective? And so certainly putting ICE or military in near the voting booths is a possibility, as you're suggesting here. To what degree would they arrest people, especially citizens who are going to vote, as a form of intimidation? Versus just being there and being generally thuggish, I don't know. I agree with you that that's probably the best guess as to what they'll do, but there are things that I'm not sure that I agree with you on. So first off, I don't think that they're unconcerned. Trump might say that, but Trump says a lot of things that he doesn't really believe. You could tell the concern from the Republicans in Congress. So they're beginning to panic, and they're telling Trump, we're going to lose. You got to turn around, and that panic actually led Trump to turn around on ICE a little bit and get rid of. I always get that guy's name confused. I want to say Bonvino because of Bongino, but Bovino, that's what it is. Thank you. Getting rid of Bovino and going with a new strategy in regards to immigration, but also might have led to Trump trying this memorandum of understanding because they're definitely worried they're going to lose. So now, the thing that I will add on to what you're saying is that James Carville keeps saying that he thinks Trump's going to leave before his term is up, and that's what I said in Trump's first term. So I'm very partial to that idea, and I think that there's a decent chance it'll happen. So Carville and I are about the only two people I think in the country that do believe that. But one of the reasons that I think that might happen is because they want to give JD Vance a better chance of winning in 2028. And as we showed you in the Insurrection Act story from today, JD Vance internally at the White House is the most enthusiastic about breaking the laws, breaking the rules, the Constitution, etc. So I'm afraid that he's going to get to rig his own election. So I'm much more worried about 2028 than I am about 26, although of course we should be on the lookout and be vigilant about 26 as well.
Yeah, just wanted to mention one thing related to that, and then I'll jump off. There was reports from The Intercept that ICE is raiding law offices to try to get immigrant information. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. And then for everybody listening, there's been U.S. citizens that get arrested because they don't have the sufficient documentation they claim at the time, and they're not considering Star ID licenses as sufficient. So we're talking passports or birth certificates. So if you think that you're in an area where there's could be some shenanigans, I would recommend getting a passport now, or getting your birth certificate and making sure that you have that stuff on you. And don't take the bait. If there's bait out there and people are starting to get crazy around ICE, don't take the bait. Just, be a good little citizen, sit in line, do what you got to do, and that's going to make the difference. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Look, last things I'll add to that is, I agree, stay calm, make sure you vote. If, there's mayhem or you get frustrated or other things happening, you don't vote, then they won. So don't let them do that to you, okay? Make sure that, it's the most important right that we have. So if you can't do that, then you really have no control over your government at all. So make sure you vote. And don't let them intimidate you ahead of time, preemptively. Oh, I might not show up because ICE might be there. I don't want people panicking and that leading to some people not showing up. And then finally, look, if they're going to ask for passports, 50% of Americans don't have passports, including a ton of right wingers. Likely more right wingers don't have passports. Now, I know they won't ask in right wing districts. They'll only ask in left wing districts if they go in that direction. But people will be really pissed if that happens. That's not a little thing. You don't have to have a passport to vote. And if they start saying that and inventing new things on the spot, that will not be well received, not just by the left, but definitely by independents, and I suspect some portion of the right wing as well. All right, Brett, who's next?
All right, next up is Hannah with an H, has a question about Ohio races.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, Hannah.
Hi, Cenk. I wanted to ask you about Ohio's 6th congressional district race because we just had our primary. I live in Tuscarawas County, which, if you recall, our Tuscarawas County Young Dems have been tuning in every so often, and you've been attempting to pronounce it. You've done a pretty good job, if I say so myself. But
I'm surprised by that, but okay.
No, you and Anna both nailed it. So we just had our primary, and it was a 6-way race. And I've been listening to you since, end of 2015. And so I've had this idea of primaries are, where it's at. That's where you can get your best candidate to then run in the general. So I was really stoked, wow, we've got 6 candidates. That's really unusual for our area. I want to see how this goes. So our local, the Tuscarawas County Young Dems had a meet the candidates night, and they invited all the candidates. And so it was 5 men and 1 woman. And when I left the event, I thought, well, I'm kind of torn between 2 candidates, but I know who I'm not voting for because she did a really horrible job. So as much as I would love to see women represented more, she was clearly the worst candidate if you went to this event. So primary day comes and goes, she wins. And those of us who went to this meet the candidates thing were like, oh my God, this is going to be a bloodbath because we're already at a disadvantage being in red Ohio. Now we're putting up this horrific Democratic candidate who's we've essentially what I'm hearing from people is, we might as well just hand this race over to the Republican because she's a disaster. So there were a couple people talking about, well, maybe we can get a write-in campaign going and this kind of thing. But they think what I'm hearing, the chitter chatter is it's an uphill battle. We've got other races to focus on. So like what I'm hearing is they've already given up on this race. Now, I don't know if it would be better to have her in office or the Republican, but either way, she's not going to get the support of the local parties because when she goes and visits them, it's a disaster. So I guess I just wanted to get your opinion about, we're in the fight of our lives this day and age. And what I'm hearing is, we're just not going to worry about this one and hope we do better the next time. And like my heart is broken because it was a primary and I was so excited. And now I'm just not sure what we should be doing. Should we just focus on all the other winnable races if there's no path to victory with this woman? Or should we push really hard to try to get a candidate in this spot that might potentially have a chance at winning, even though it is an uphill battle? What do you think?
Yeah, so I got to keep it real with you. A writing candidate is near impossible. So like the only way that it could possibly happen is if the person is already an incumbent and they've had a tremendous amount of publicity, like what happened with Lisa Murkowski in Alaska when she did that. And Joe Biden was a writing candidate in New Hampshire primary. But even then, to give you a sense of how hard it is, they spent millions upon millions to get people to write in the sitting president in the New Hampshire primary in 2020. So, okay, having said that, I'm mainly more curious than anything else about that because I don't know anything about that race. So was it that she just like was not familiar with the policies and had trouble speaking, et cetera? Or is she conservative, pro AIPAC, pro corporate candidate, corporate PACs? What was the issue with her?
Okay, so I'll give you a couple of highlights. My friend who was sitting next to me at one point turned to me and said what I was thinking in my head, which was, is she drunk right now? So, and then I wasn't sure if that was a one-off thing or just how she is. It sounds like that's just how she is. So she just did not have very well formulated thoughts in general. And all of the candidates were given the questions ahead of time, but it seemed like she did not prepare at all. And one of the questions was, how would you work in a bipartisan way if you get elected? What would be like the first thing you would work on in a bipartisan way? And her answer was, I'm gonna abolish ICE. And so I was like, okay. Like, so just, and then compared to the 5 other guys who like came up with answers and had thought about it, she just, it was painful. It was painful. And I think, I think we had one of two thoughts. Either people went to the polls, had no idea who anybody was, and picked a woman because it was different, and maybe they want to see more women, or maybe some Republicans registered as Democrats to vote in the primary to ensure a horrible candidate, because there were some decent, really good candidates, and I don't think they wanted. One of the theories is, if we get this horrible candidate instead, then we won't have to worry and our guy will be safe.
Yeah, Hannah, I have a completely different theory. So I don't know if you know, but I'll ask. Do you know if she had the most amount of money in the primary?
I don't know, but I do know she does not have a campaign manager, and there is a website, but there's nothing on it. It's like she's put nothing into this. It's like she fell backwards into this somehow. It's bizarre.
That's interesting. Okay, because normally I'm not overly surprised by your story because, and I don't know that that's the case in this situation at all. But normally what happens is a very inferior candidate wins because that's where all the money went. And why does the money go to inferior candidates? Because the donors want empty vessels. They don't want someone who's thinking for themselves. They're like, oh, you can't come up with a single thought? Perfect. Here are your thoughts that we paid for. So go say these, right? And that's why you'd be shocked at the average IQ of congressmen. It's like well below average. They're not looking for smart, independent minded people. They're looking for, blank slates who they could just tell them what to say and they say it, and that's it. So, I mean, what you're describing with that candidate, if I pulled in, every member of Congress here, I bet you at least 70% of the congressmen would match that description. Yeah, so the interview that we did with Grover Norquist back in the 2004 election, because we're ancient, always comes to mind. We're like, why did you guys decide to go with Bush instead of McCain? He runs one of the largest tax cut organizations, and both Bush and McCain had gone and sought their endorsement. And what Grover Norquist basically said to us, and it was kind of interesting that he admitted it, was, well, we asked both of them, are you going to listen to what we say? And McCain said that of course he's going to care what we say and he's going to listen to it, and but he's independent minded and he'll make his own decisions. He's going to be the president of the United States. And he's a strong personality. And Bush said, no, I'll just do whatever you want. So obviously we went with Bush. And I was like, oh, there it is. That's the Rosetta Stone for American politics. So that's usually what happens. But look, in Ohio, you got Sherrod Brown running for Senate again. And so there's some really important races. So do the best you can, okay?
Oh, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Brett, who's next?
Okay, Boomer Dragon Cat's back with a question for you.
Hey, Cat.
Hi, Cenk. Hey, listen, after our last conversation, I almost changed my handle to Doomer Boomer Cat, but I've worked on my attitude since then.
Okay.
Anyway, we're glad you're home safe. My question is, what did you think of the bread and circuses at the White House on Sunday?
That's funny you use that phrase, because I swear I almost tweeted that, but we were in transit back from Europe on Sunday, so that's why I didn't do it. But yeah, I was literally gonna use the phrase bread and circus. I mean, that is so Trump, and it's so on the nose. And I mean, look, he doesn't know any history, so he probably doesn't even know what bread and circus means. But for the rest of Washington, I thought, isn't this so obvious? I mean, to put on a big spectacle like this. In fact, I think I saw on Twitter somebody did this like meme or whatever of that particular meme was if Netanyahu goes to the UFC fights, but really it could be Trump too, where at the end of the fight they go to Joaquin Phoenix's character in Gladiator, and they go like this, right? Like it's Gladiator fights. It's and then you've got Trump obsessed with the Kennedy, putting his name on the Kennedy Center and building a ballroom and the reflective pool. It's all about pomp and circumstance, and then like gladiator fights for the masses.
Well, as Commodus said, I'm vexed. I'm very vexed. So
that's exactly right. That's an awesome Gladiator quote. Nice job, Kat. Yeah.
I'm going to let other people jump on, but thanks for answering my question, Cenk.
No problem. And one last quick thing. One of the fighters apparently is called Michelle Obama Man, and everybody's outraged by it. Of course, some of those knuckleheads think that way. Like, how can people be surprised by that? It's not, a UFC fighter wasn't a Rhodes Scholar, huh? I didn't see that coming.
Cherry on top, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, real quick, last call.
Oh, hello.
All right,
hey, Cenk.
Go for it. From Austin.
Hey, Cenk, how are you?
Good. What do you got?
Just a question, kind of policy related about AI and all the mega AI centers coming through. So I work in Austin. I live in Austin now, work for a tech company. So I'm financially biased, and I'm kind of rooting for the whole AI boom because financially that'll be good for me. But at the same time, I'm like, the way that they are doing this whole AI tech boom and how they're ruining communities and poisoning the water and all of that. I've been seeing a lot of the news, especially from More Perfect Union and all of that. I'm glad AOC and I believe Ro Khanna went down to those communities, which is really good. So I want to see the tech centers in general, but at the same time, I'm upset of like they're ruining communities. So my compromise, I want to get your opinion, is to build the data centers, but don't use the public utilities. Somehow collect rainwater or have them on the coastal areas and use desalination plant. Yes, it's expensive, but you're $1 billion company, so add that to your own capex expense. So then you don't use our groundwater or public utilities, and then build your own electricity grid. I'm not sure how that is possible, but again, multi-billion-dollar companies, that's your own expense.
Yeah.
And then obviously regulate AI for like workplace productivity perspectives, not to like take over work, but to enhance workers' productivity. So then we can actually have a 4-day workday like they have in Europe and have better work-life balance.
Yeah. So, okay, first of all, I love that you admitted your bias off the top. So good on you for that. So look, there's a bare minimum that's kind of obvious. So whether, what we do with AI and how we protect American workers is a different question. But on the data centers, they definitely have to pay their own costs. So it's one thing to use a public utility, but then in a lot of places, they're making the rest of the community pay their costs. Oh, hell no. Yeah. That's insane, right? So if AOC and others are fighting back against that, then good on her. I'm really glad she's doing that, because it's totally unacceptable. And I think that it's so unacceptable that we're gonna win on that. Even in a debate that I did with Kevin O'Leary on a Diary of a CEO, he conceded, oh yeah, no, you gotta pay your own costs. Putting it on the taxpayers is a disaster. And it's a disaster for the AI companies too, because it's gonna make everybody hate them. So I think we'll wanna win on that ground. Everything else, we'll have to see and take it as we go. All right, unfortunately we're out of time now, but thank you for that call, I appreciate it. And at least we had an easy resolution for a portion of it. All right, guys, good questions, love the interaction. We'll do it again for today, much love. I gotta go, but also check me out on News Nation, which is what I'm gonna be on next. So it should be fun. See you there.